Alright guys, we're going to give this a shot. This is section 6.1, angles and their measure. And this is kind of a vocab heavy section, so we're going to go through a couple words, draw some pictures, and then kind of get the vocab out of the way before we start some problems. So first what we're going to do is we're going to talk about putting angles on an XY axis grid. And so if this is my x-axis, there's a couple terms we want to talk about. We want to talk about the initial side of the ray, and the initial side is simply the beginning position. So if I put a ray, let's just say, on the x-axis here, that would be what I call the initial side, where I start the angle. Then we also have what we call the terminal side. So it makes sense that the terminal side would then be the finishing part of the ray, so let's put that maybe over here. So the blue would be the initial and the green would be the terminal. Then if we look, there's a couple things we need to talk about once we draw the two rays in there. So the blue and the green, that together makes an angle. And the measure of the angle would be the amount of rotation from initial to the terminal. So from here to here, that's what I would call the measure of the angle. Let's give it a number like, I don't know, 100 degrees. So the measure of that angle would be 100 degrees. And then what we want to talk about is the fact that we could go different ways around the angle. We could go to the left, to the right, counterclockwise, and clockwise. And typically what we talk about is that positive angles, if I'm talking about a positive angle, I'm actually going to go counterclockwise around the circle. So a positive 100 is right where it would be. Hi. And then that means that negative angles would go in the clockwise direction. So if I want to do a negative 100, I would go clockwise this way, and negative 100 would be about there, where this value here would be 100 degrees, but negative meaning in the clockwise direction. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about right now is coterminal angles and reference angles, as well as putting an angle in standard position. So I'm going to move this up just a little bit. We're going to start with the reference angle for coterminal angles. So if I start drawing down here, and I want to draw a 30-degree angle. Okay, so first of all, 30 degrees, positive, if I have my XY axes, I'm going to start in what we call standard position. Standard position simply means I'm going to put the initial side on the positive x-axis, just like we did in the first one, and then the terminal side I'm going to put that in the counterclockwise direction, since it's positive, 30 degrees, and it's going to remain in the first quadrant here. So here's my little 30-degree angle in here. Now, if I talk about what's the reference angle, the reference angle is when I take the terminal side of my ray and I connect it down to the x-axis. So you can see I'm going to create a little right triangle in here. And the reference angle is always the one from the vertex of the origin here. So the reference angle for this one is going to be 30 degrees. Now, we're going to do some where the reference angle is not 30 degrees. So, for instance, if I did one right below that, let's put it here, and let's say I did a positive 110 degrees. So 110 would be about here, right, with the initial side still here. And then if I take the end of the terminal side, connect it down to the x-axis, and I ask for this angle right in here, how would I figure that out? Well, the way to do it is, if you know that this is 110, that's what we talked about, and you know you have to connect the terminal side down to the x-axis, this remaining angle in here that I have with the dot would be 180 degrees, because from geometry a straight line is 180, minus 110. So the reference angle for this one, that little dot, would be 70-degree reference angle. So you always connect the terminal side down to the x-axis. That's the reference angle. So now if we go back to my original part A here, my 30 degrees, I've graphed it, 30 degrees in the positive direction. Reference angle would be that 30, because I connect it down to the x-axis. And now I want to find what I call a coterminal angle. Here's what a coterminal angle is. You can have multiple times you go around the circle. So if I have 30 degrees right there, what if I took my 30, and then I went all the way around the circle again, but still ended up in the same spot? That would be 360 degrees all the way around, plus the extra 30, so that would give me 390 degrees, would be a coterminal angle with the 30-degree angle. Okay, so positive coterminal angle. Now if I want to find a negative coterminal angle, same idea, except instead of going in the same direction, I'm going to start with my 30 degrees, go clockwise, negative 360, so negative degrees, ending up on the same spot, so negative 330 degrees is another coterminal angle with 30 degrees. Okay, so we talked about a reference angle, we talked about coterminal angles in the positive and the negative direction. Okay, so let's do another example of a coterminal reference angle with the positive and negative. So part B here. All right, let's take a negative 150. So negative, I'm going to go in the clockwise direction, 150 degrees. Here's my initial side. My terminal side would be about there, where this angle in here would be my 150. Okay. Now the angle I'm going to write is a positive, even though it's going in the negative direction, it's still a 150 degree opening, like if I took out a protractor and measured it. So 150 degrees. Now I'm asking for the reference angle. So I take my terminal side, connect it to the x-axis, and this little dot in here, that's where my reference angle will go. So for this problem, my reference angle is a 30 degree. So if you notice, part A and part B have the same reference angle, even though they're in completely different quadrants, completely different spots. So 30 degrees reference angle, got it. Now I want two angles, a positive one and a negative one, that are coterminal with this same thing. So the easiest way to do it, so let's do the positive one first. If I go from the positive x-axis where I would normally start in the counterclockwise direction to get there, how big would that green angle be? So here's how we answer it. We know each quadrant is 90 degrees. So I've got 90 here, and then I've got an extra 30 from my reference angle. So 90 and 90 is 180 plus another 30, 210 degrees would be the positive coterminal angle with negative 150. Then if I want a negative one, that one's a little bit harder to see because we kind of have to go around the circle a few times. So let me kind of erase some of this so I give myself some more space. Okay, I'm going to erase that guy there. All right, now let's go back. Hopefully you guys have enough space left. Let's go back. Let's talk about the negative angle. So negative 150 is already there, but I need another number, which pretty much means I need to go around the circle negative 360, then another negative 150. So then I will have my whole negative coterminal angle with negative 150. That's a mouthful. So if I go negative 360 and another negative 150, I end up with negative 510 degrees as my negative coterminal angle. Okay, so here's one. Part A answer, part B answer. So we talked about reference angles and coterminal angles.